We have a question about hot dogs and hamburgers. The question reads, the following graph shows the market for hot dogs in Houston, where there are over 1,000 hot dog stands at any given moment. Okay, now the 1,000 hot dog stands tells us it's a highly competitive market. That's not a significant detail at this point in the course. And in macroeconomics, probably not at any time in the course. In micro, we get into when we get into industrial organization, that becomes a factor where we talk about different market structures. But anyway, so we've got a highly competitive market. Suppose the price of hamburgers increases. Assume that people regard hot dogs and hamburgers as substitutes. Okay. Now remember, a substitute good is one you can use in place of another good. A complement is a good you use with another good. So we can eat hamburgers or hot dogs, but we don't typically eat chips or dip, right? We use chips and dip together. They're complements. So to make sure we're not ambiguous, okay, now in real life, I've been known to eat a hamburger and a hot dog. Okay, so they can be complements, but to make it clear, they're saying they're substitutes here. Okay, show the effect of this change on the market for hot dogs by shifting one or both of the curves on the following graph. Okay, here's our graph. Now, I always like to put the market we're looking at up here. See, we could have had the supply and demand of hamburgers here, but we have to be careful. It shows what will be the effect on the market for hot dogs if the price of hamburgers increases. We don't care why the price of hamburgers went up. Doesn't matter. It just matters that the price of hamburgers went up. And we want to look at the effect on the market for hot dogs. So we draw a supply and demand curve for hot dogs. Here's the quantity. Here's the price. Excuse me. And here's the equilibrium quantity and the equilibrium price. So we'll start out here in equilibrium, and then something changes, something to shake this up. Now, it says the price of hamburgers goes up. Well, this is the price of hot dogs, okay? Quantity of hot dogs. So something outside this little system of ours is changing. That means a graph, one of these curves on our graph has to move. Because this graph can only deal with changes in the price of hot dogs, changes in the quantity of hot dogs. Something is happening outside of hot dogs, hamburgers. So if the price of hot dogs goes up, the price of hamburgers goes up, what's going to happen to hot dogs? Well, if these are substitute goods, and we're happy with a hamburger or a hot dog, we can choose either one. The price of hamburgers goes up, we're going to buy fewer hamburgers, right? And what are we going to buy instead? Hot dogs. So if the price of hamburgers goes up, our demand for hot dogs will shift to the right. Now, when we say our demand for hot dogs goes up, we're talking about along this axis. We're talking about the quantity going up. So that's a rightward shift of the demand curve. Our demand is increasing. Increasing means quantity's increasing. So this is an increase in demand. Going back the other way, this way would be a decrease in demand. So some of these little things can be confusing. But that's what we're talking about, a rightward shift in demand when we're increasing our demand. So the result here And the question doesn't ask this, but it very well could have, is we have an increase in equilibrium quantity and an increase in equilibrium price. And of course, we're holding all else constant in all these problems. We're letting hamburger prices increase, but nothing else in the whole world is changing, okay? That's the ceteris paribus assumption. Now the question goes on and says, suppose Congress passes a tax on income of Houston residents. And if hot dogs are a normal good, what will happen to the demand for hot dogs? Well, let's talk about normal and inferior goods for a second. A normal good is a good we desire. It's more desirable, okay? An inferior good is something less desirable. We still want it. I mean, we'll still consume it, but only if we can't get our more desirable good, okay? So if hot dogs are a normal good and taxes go up, what does that do to our ability to buy any normal good or any good? Any good. Taxes have gone up. We're left with less money, right? Less money to buy stuff. So again, ceteris paribus, holding everything else constant, that would shift our demand to the left. Go back this way. That'd be a decrease in demand, and all else constant, again, that would decrease the equilibrium price for hot dogs and decrease the equilibrium quantity. Now, what would happen? I know this graph's getting a little messy, but what would have happened if, let's change the question a little bit and say that hot dogs were an inferior good? If hot dogs are an inferior good, that means we'll buy it, but only if we can't afford the more desirable normal good. Well, if they were an inferior good and our income went down because of the higher taxes, that would be a rightward shift. Well, let me plug. Anyway, that's the direction that matters. It's getting a little messy here. But that would be a rightward shift in the demand curve. We're buying more hot dogs because we have to. We can't afford what we really want. Our income's gone down, so we've got to buy these lousy hot dogs. Well, we prefer hamburgers or steak or something else. Or Top Ramen noodles is a good example of an inferior good. People tend to buy that when they're poor college students. And when they graduate, make a little more money, they stop buying Top Ramen noodles. All right, I think that covers that question.